Other questions? Yeah, please.
Hello everyone, my name is Saurabh and I am a member of Team Yuva Kranti, and I want to ask a question to Honorable Dr. Varun Sami that how we have to tackle the rivalry between China and India, as it is very important to have cooperation between these countries among BRICS.
Interstate dynamics of these two massive Asian countries. Um, I think the answer out here is probably to sort of see to what extent China is able to, and it's particularly its leadership is able to, more than the Chinese population, I would say the Chinese leadership is able to sort of make this transition to being a great power. But it's not easy to become a great power, and I think one of the my points is, and I have lots of Chinese friends. I go to China reasonably often. I'm not a China specialist. I don't know the language, but I have the fortune to go there quite often. I think one of the real challenges for them is going to be to not fall into this fallacy that because in the ancient past a large part of Asia was centered around China. Asia was basically a Chinese-centered continent, right? In cultural terms, to begin to feel that just because that was once the case, that everybody else will just automatically accept that China has a preponderant role in Asia. I think that's the critical question. For instance, Vietnam will never accept it today. The Vietnamese who resisted so many powerful countries for so long will not accept Chinese hegemony. You can do anything you want, and yet undeniably, China has had a huge cultural, civilizational influence on Vietnam. So I think to me that is in some ways the core question. If China can somehow negotiate that, you see when you start playing that game, then there's another problem if you're south of the Himalayas. That cultural influence never came here. So certainly the people living south of the Himalayas have no experience of this Chinese, kind of deep historical ascendance. And so they will never kind of react to China in that kind of way. So I think those are some of the core questions. What I guess ultimately China wants, a lot of what China wants are actually fairly reasonable things. It's a massive population growing at a very fast rate. Like India, it is a resource-dependent country ultimately. A lot of China's resources will come from outside. A lot of what China produces will go out. So China sort of needs to have freedom of navigation, etc. It's in China's national interest. So in that context, what China is doing in the South China Sea today, it doesn't make much sense. In the long run, China is actually working, I would argue, against its own interests. And particularly, if it's not in China's interest that the countries to the south of China, begin to sort of view China in security terms. But that's precisely what the United States would like. From the US point of view, there's nothing better than the countries on the southern flank of China beginning to see China as an emerging threat. So it's going to actually require a great deal of wisdom on the part of the Chinese leadership to understand this and to play this game carefully. How to sort of balance its rise on the one hand, but show that sort of sensitivity to the smaller neighbors, make the smaller neighbors feel that they have a stake in China's rise, that China's rise is going to be advantageous to them. That's the point which I made about the BRICS also, by the way. I think that's going to be one of the core challenges for the BRICS. Because as the comment was made, the BRICS, okay, they represent 50% of the global population. What about the other 50%? Why should the other 50% say, oh wow, what a wonderful thing? It may be great for us, but what about the others? So in other words, it's extremely important for others to have a stake in your well-being and success. And that's going to be one of the core challenges for the BRICS. It's going to be a core challenge for China in the coming years. So I hope I have sort of answered your question. The thing on empire, if I can just say one thing very briefly, Mr. Charles, it's this, that you see, empires also contribute to law and order. So empires are sort of, if you look at empires historically, empires are about sort of creating political and military control over a vast, culturally heterogeneous space. But within the process of creating that control over a vast heterogeneous space, certain commonalities in terms of, well, the Roman roads, for example, through Europe, just as an example. So the point is, so the point is that to my mind, the only thing I was saying was, it doesn't make sense to see the U.S. role today, in that sense, in imperial terms.